Welcome to welding class at Cedar Crest High School. Welding is a skill that can be a fun hobby or a successful career. Either way, the first step in your welding experience is to understand the safety considerations. The safety considerations that we need to address include extreme bright light, extreme heat, electric shock, and toxic fumes. As you saw in the intro to this video, the light given off by the welding arc is very bright. It will sunburn your eyes and your skin very quickly, much quicker than you will get sunburned out in the bright sunlight in the summertime. So we need to cover up all your skin and your eyes when we're welding. The temperatures that you are going to be exposed to exceed 1200 degrees. So there are some very strong safety considerations for the temperature of the molten metal that you're going to be dealing with. Electric shock. The heat that we are generating to melt the metal involves an arc. So we got to make sure that your safety is protected from being shocked at all times. And you saw some fumes given off by the welding arc in the intro to this video. Those fumes are also toxic if you breathe them in excessive amounts. In order to organize your thoughts for all these safety considerations, we will think of them as what we have to do before we weld, what we need to consider while we're welding, and what we need to consider when we're finished welding. Before we start welding, we need to consider our environment and our gear. Our environment, we must look around for anything hazardous, anything that could burn or explode. So we want to look around our welding environment for paint cans, gas cans, paper towels, cardboard, anything flammable or any closed cylinder. All that stuff must be removed from our welding area. The next thing we must consider in our environment is any tripping hazards, any cords or clutter laying around. When we are welding, you'll see in a minute, we're going to have a welding helmet on that's going to restrict our vision. So we have to be careful that the area around us is clear so that when or if we have to move, that we don't trip and fall in this environment where there's a lot of objects that could hurt us. Our next consideration before welding is to protect yourself from the considerations that we outlined earlier. We're going to start from the ground up. You need to start by having the proper shoes. The proper shoes definitely need to be closed toe and they should be leather. Nylon running shoes will be ruined by the sparks hitting them, and the sparks can actually burn through the nylon and get to your foot and burn your foot. So leather shoes. The next thing is long pants. Denim works the best. I encourage you to bring an old pair of jeans that you can leave here in the welding lab to use for welding class. From the waist up, the school will provide you with the proper safety gear. The first thing we're going to talk about is the welding coat. So you will use a welding coat either provided by you or the school. The welding coat should not have pockets on the outside. It should cover you up all the way to the wrists and all the way up to the neck. When you're welding, your welding coat needs to be buttoned all the way up to the neck at all times to avoid getting sunburn on your neck right here below your chin. Next thing is your eyes. We are going to wear a welding helmet, as you saw I had on earlier, but under your helmet you must have safety glasses on, and the school will provide them, or you may provide your own. A welding helmet. What the welding helmet does is it protects the skin on your face from the bright light, and it also protects your eyes from the bright light. The bright light of the weld, if you look at it, not through a safety lens that is at least a shade 10, it will sunburn the retinas of your eyes, and we call that welder's flash. And we'll talk about that in a separate video. These helmets are automatic darkening helmets. They will start off at about a shade 4, which is what you're used to seeing through with your sunglasses. When the helmet senses the arc, it will automatically darken to a shade 10. And that is too dark for you to see through without the light of the arc. The last piece of welding gear that you need to have on are welding gloves. And the gloves are there to protect your hands from the heat and the light. The welding gloves have long cuffs on them, and they will overlap the coat that you have on. Now that we have all the gear covered, we're going to move on to the equipment. Through several short demonstrations over the next couple periods, you will learn how to use the equipment safely. If you ever feel you don't understand the equipment, you need to ask me for further explanation. In order to use the equipment safely, it's important that you're comfortable and you understand it. And again, we'll cover that in a few short demonstrations over the next couple of days. That covers everything that we need to do before you weld. There are some considerations actually while you are welding. It's the bright light. We covered that already. We need to cover all our skin. We never look at the arc, not through a shaded lens. We also have the fumes. While you're welding, in the beginning video you saw the fumes coming off the weld. While you are welding, it's important that you don't have your head directly over your welding arc. Those fumes can come in under your helmet, and if you breathe them in over an extended period of time, it can cause damage to your health. The other things are electric shock. If you're welding and you're sweating, that means you're making your gear wet. Wet gear conducts electricity, and we need to change that out. Water will be your #1 hazard. In this lab, you should not experience any wet conditions. Should you be welding outside of this lab, you need to know that if your leads are running through water puddles, that's a definite hazard for shock. While you're welding, the other thing is the extreme heat. The molten puddle of metal is well over 1,000 degrees, and you definitely don't want to touch that even with your gloves on. You want to use a steel pliers to move hot metal to the cooling tank and cool it properly so it doesn't burn you. After you're finished welding for the period, the end of your safety is actually cleaning up. So you have to make sure you put everything away as to avoid clutter in the lab, and also make sure you do not leave any hot metal laying around that somebody can come up and unsuspectingly touch it and burn themselves. So you need to make sure all your hot items are cooled and put away, and all your gear is put back in its respective place. If you follow these basic safety rules, you will have a fun and rewarding experience in welding class here at Cedar Crest High School.